Please welcome Shasta Nelson, author and friendship expert.
Now, 6 or 7 months ago, we were largely unaware of the pandemic that was fast approaching, but the same cannot be said of an epidemic of another kind. We've had medical doctors, mental health professionals, and sociologists sounding the alarm for years, decades, that our loneliness has been on the rise, and we're seeing more and more what incredible impact it's having on our health, on our happiness, and our success. We are lonely. By and large, more of us are lonely than not. Now, when I say the word lonely, it's not a word that any of us have been conditioned to like. We kind of think, oh, I don't want to be that, as though it's a problem. It's not a problem to be lonely. Our bodies are wired to feel hunger, exhaustion, thirst, loneliness when one of our needs isn't getting met. It's only a problem if we ignore the call to eat, to sleep, to have drink, and to be connected. The damage is done when we ignore our hunger, the way our body's wired to survive and to replenish. We're meant to be connected, and way too many of us are not experiencing those benefits. In fact, when I say the word lonely, about 25% of us feel it really deeply, quite acutely. We have nobody to confide in, nobody we feel like really understands us, and we don't feel close to all that many people. So we're starving, you could say, starving for connection. But more than just those who are starving, like being without food, is all the rest of us who are malnourished for our social health. There's a large number of us who maybe we have one or two people, maybe we have some friends, maybe we're getting enough social interaction, but we're lacking the intimacy. There's a big number of us that are dissatisfied with our friendships, with our relationships, who wish we felt more supported, who feel like we still aren't seen as who we want to be completely. We don't feel like we really have enough support and enough people interacting with us in ways that leave us feeling good. In fact, a big study was just reported. Cigna did one of the largest studies of the kind, reported numbers earlier this year, before we all went into remote working and isolation. 61% of us feel lonely. 61%. That's a really high number. And those numbers are matched in other countries that are also doing the science and the research right now. The UK and Australia are places that come to mind as places where I've seen very similar numbers when we're looking at the loneliness of our people. Now, if we ignore this loneliness, it's not just kind of like oh, that's too bad, so you're just going to be more lonely. No, it's doing incredible damage to us. In fact, it's virtually impossible to be happy if we feel lonely. When we look at all the different studies of loneliness and of happiness, and what helps create happiness, 70% of it comes together for our relationships. 70%. That means that when you think of everything else that you think will make you happy, you name that ideal body weight and those kids going to daycare and that promotion and that paycheck and that house and that car and yada, 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 all of that adds up to 30%. 70% of our happiness is our relationships, the quantity of them, the strength of them, the meaningfulness of them. They matter. Huge. And that translates over to our physical health, absolutely. If we feel disconnected and don't take care of it, it does the same damage on our bodies as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's twice as harmful as being obese, and the equivalent damage of a lifelong alcoholic is seen in our bodies if we go through life not feeling supported. Our connections really matter. It matters more than whether we exercise, more than our diet, more than our DNA. It's staggering how much we're starting to see our bodies are designed to feel supported. And it's not happening the way we're by and large doing our lives. And it's affecting us at work, where we spend most of our time. Absolutely. And it's one thing if we were so fulfilled in our personal lives, so connected, so seen, that we could go to work and say, okay, that's just a necessary drain. Not that we would want that though, because work is where we spend most of our time with people, where we're making arguably one of our biggest contributions. So of course we'd want that seen and appreciated and celebrated, and to be able to do that with other people. But unfortunately, we're not coming to work with a full tank of connection, and we're certainly not leaving work with enough connection to go home. And if we don't have time to fit it in with spouse and the kids and chores and errands and exercise and all the other things that we're trying to cram into our personal life, we're coming home drained with less energy and unmotivated to be able to then take care of our social needs outside of our work hours. It's crucial. It's imperative that we figure out how to do this in our work hours while we're with the people that we are seeing on a regular basis. Because work is kind of what school was to us as kids, if that's what it is to us as adults. The place that we go to on a regular basis where we see familiar people, where we have the chance to interact and create some kind of a pattern and relationship and knowing of each other without it always having to be initiated emails and checking in a month from now and all the scheduling and the coordinating. We're just there. And so we still have to schedule the meetings and we still have to schedule the Zooms and all that stuff. But the truth of the matter is these are the people that we are connecting with, or should be. And if we're not, it's doing a lot of damage in the workplace. So it'd be one thing if our employers just wanted us to be connected because they want us happy and healthy and satisfied with our work. But it's to their bottom line, to their benefit, that we have relationships at work too. Gallup came out with a study years ago and has gotten so much pushback from people that the best employees are those who have a best friend at work. The best employees are those who have a best friend at work. And we can say, oh, I'm uncomfortable with the term best friend, or well, I don't really want all my employees, da 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 da. We can say all that. The data says otherwise. And we know it to be true. A big study came out of Myers-Briggs Center last year where they surveyed 130 plus countries and 10,000 people to look at what brings us the most satisfaction in our jobs. And I would hope that relationships would show up in the top 5, but would you know it edged out every other factor and is number 1. We like our jobs when we like who we work with. We all know the experience of having the dream job and not just hating it because of the friction, because of the toxicity, because of a negative relationship. And we all know the experience of maybe it's not our dream job, but we love who we work with and it fulfills us and it matters and we could stay there. In fact, Gallup says that if we have a best friend at work, we are 7 times more engaged, more wanting to stay there, longer retention, more showing up with energy. We are less likely to call in sick. We treat our customers better. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. 7 times. I mean, that would be an impressive statistic if it was when you have a best friend at work, you're twice as likely. But no, this is 7 times more engaged. Isn't that amazing? You would think that our workplaces would be make a friend. This is top concern, top priority. And yet so many of us are really uncomfortable with it or we don't know how to do it. But it's hurting us huge. And it's hurting some of the people we care about the most, if not us. For those of us who value diversity, having a big impact on a variety of other people. And we know that it's not enough for us to feel like we belong. We want everybody to feel like they belong. And so when we see numbers that people of color feel more lonely in the workplace, more worried that they are going to feel alienated when stressful situations arise, not okay. And when we see people who have poor and fair health, and mental health and physical health, reporting that they don't feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, or that they feel judged, or that they don't really feel accepted, not okay. And when we see that senior leaders are reporting high numbers of loneliness, because they don't feel like there's anybody they can really talk to and be able to share what's going on in their lives, are we really saying we're okay with our leaders leading us lonely? If there's anybody I want feeling fulfilled and strong and healthy, it's our leaders, and yet we have done a huge disservice to the way we do leadership, letting them say it's okay for you to be lonely because you need to keep this distance. Not okay. And so we have studies that show men are showing up more lonely in our workplaces. They feel more empty at work. They don't feel like maybe they can be as vulnerable or as seen. That's not something we've encouraged them to be or supported them in being. We show studies of women when they feel like they're the outlier or a minority. They don't feel like they belong. And so all of our workplaces need to stop, sit back, and say, what are we doing to really make sure that our people feel seen in a safe and supportive and satisfying way that leaves them feeling good? This matters. And this is where it's so fun for me. It's such an honor to be with all of you today because it hasn't always been that conferences and corporations are like, ooh, friendship expert, let's bring her in. And yet we should be. Because we know that when our people feel connected and engaged and loved, they show up being excited to be there on Monday morning. We look forward to hanging out and interacting and connecting. It matters to us to belong and be part of a team and be connected with each other. And so this is really significant for workplaces to learn. I love going in and teaching friendship and what bonds us, what builds trust, what helps us feel close to each other, what does the appropriate, healthy sharing look like. And so today I just want to give you a framework, if you will, that will help you kind of assess the relationships in your life. I could go on and on with the research, and I could do that for an hour, but we're going to give you the first chapter of my upcoming book. It comes out, you're going to be the first ones to get it. It's coming out in a few weeks, August 18. But if you text the word friendship to 474747, we'll make sure you get the first chapter that gives all that research I've shared plus more and cites all of the resources and the research for you. But then what we do with that research is what matters. And so let me share with you the 3 requirements, the 3 drivers, the 3 non-negotiables, the 3 things that every relationship is built on. This is the foundation of relationship. So at the bottom of the triangle is positivity. That's positive emotions. We need to feel good. We need to enjoy our interaction. This is kindness and curiosity and laughter, pride, inspiration, hope, celebration, cheering, anything that leaves us feeling good, empathy, validation. You get the idea. All of us need more of that. And interestingly, for us to feel good, we need to have 5 good feelings for every negative feeling to keep the relationship healthy. That's the ratio. And so if anybody has some extra stress going on in their lives, any non-ideal working conditions, any relationships, deadlines, pandemics, any of that kind of stuff, we can't always eliminate all of that, though we want to do everything we can to bring the negative down. We can always bring the positive up, and let's get that ratio back up. So one of the first questions every single one of us should be asking as we hear this is, what is one way I can generate more gratitude, more pride, more whimsy, more, you name the word for you, but what are we doing to help build the good feelings for ourselves, for our team, for the couple of people that we really care about and want to be building healthier relationships with? At the foundation of every relationship is good feelings. Because if it doesn't feel good, we don't want to keep doing it. But if it feels good, then we want to step into the second requirement, which is consistency, consistent time. Frequency, repetition, interaction. This is the hours we log together. This is the pattern our relationship develops. This is the kind of, if you call it, the scaffolding of our relationship. It's as we log time together that we start building a history. And as we build that history, we start feeling like we can predict our future, that we know how you'll respond. And that's what leaves us feeling like we can rely on you. This is what builds trust. This is what leaves us feeling safe, is that when we have consistent behavior, we start feeling safe. We know what to expect. We know what the norm is. And so every relationship has a consistency built into it if it's going to be positive and healthy. And so this is the one actually that comes the most automatically in the workplace. To some degree, you are consistently seeing the same people, whether it's through video conferencing or walking by each other's desks, sitting next to each other, having proximity. The consistency is somewhat built in. The question that each of us need to ask as we're in our current work environment is, am I being consistent with the people that really matter to me? Am I being consistent with, and maybe you're forced to be on certain meetings, but are there a few people in the workplace that you're not automatically seeing that you need to initiate consistency with? Maybe you're consistent with some people, but you want to do something different with them. Maybe you need to be more consistent, not canceling, or maybe it's adding a form of consistency. So instead of only doing email, you're also doing video conferencing. Or maybe it's instead of only talking about work, we're also talking about other things. Maybe you're adding or gluing a new way, a new pattern, a new way of interacting with each other. And so that's important, because if we just have a great time once, it's not a relationship. We have to repeat it in order for us to ever bond with each other. And then if we have good times regularly, that's what we would call social life or socializing. But without the third requirement, we're not going to bond. And the third requirement is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the sharing, it's the knowing of each other, it's feeling gotten, like we understand each other. In order for us to understand each other, we have to reveal a little bit. We have to feel like we're showing ourselves in order to feel seen. And this isn't just us and our stories and our history, but it's also feeling seen for our strengths and for our contributions, feeling seen for what we are and what we aren't. It's feeling seen for our ideas and the way we do things and feeling respected for those things and how we do those things. And so then we want to feel known. And this really, really matters in the workplace too. Interestingly enough, I go in and work with a lot of teams, and this is the one that they're most worried about. Do we really want people being vulnerable at work? Yes, you do. And when I do an assessment of all the teams, you'd be surprised perhaps to know that this is actually one of the most consistently high scores on teams. Because we need it for things like, I don't know, creativity, if you want that on any team. It's where resiliency happens. It's where we do forgiveness. It's where diversity and inclusion. It's one thing to get the numbers right. Inclusion means that we see you. We want your contribution. We want your experience to impact what we're doing. Vulnerability matters. It's us being able to say, I don't know the answer to that, or we'll figure this out together. There's so much that we really need when it comes to vulnerability. We need to be able to say, it's okay your kids are walking behind you. We see that and it's okay. We're seeing more of each other's lives, and it can bond us if we do it well. And so vulnerability is absolutely a piece of this. So every relationship starts on the bottom of the triangle, brand new, low vulnerability, low consistency, always on a foundation of positivity. And as we practice consistency, meaning more interaction, we know each other better. And more interaction, we know each other. And if we know each other, vulnerability, and it feels good, and then we want to repeat it. And then we get to know each other a little bit more, and it feels good because they empathize or they validate, and then we want to repeat it. And we practice these three things over and over and over until we have a bond. You have never build a meaningful relationship in your life without practicing these three things, whether you were aware of it or not. And conversely, any relationship in your life right now that isn't feeling good, it's because at least one of these three things is lacking. And so whatever your circumstances are right now, maybe you're working remote for the first time in your life, maybe you've been laid off, maybe you're a new hire, maybe you're trying to work with teams in different time zones. The circumstances have all changed so very much. Maybe your job description has changed. Maybe your team has shifted. Maybe there's been layoffs and additions. And so pause for a moment and just do a quick assessment. I do have an assessment that's available for everybody at thebusinessofriendship.com that you can do we ask 10 questions in each of these three areas, but you can also just check in with yourself and just say, which of these three would make the biggest difference with my feelings in this company, in this organization, on this team? Do I not feel seen enough? And I need to figure out how to do appropriate and healthy vulnerability? Or maybe it doesn't feel safe enough. Maybe there's not a reliability, a consistency. We haven't built a pattern that feels good and safe that I keep wanting to repeat. Or maybe it's not leaving me feeling good. Maybe we're consistent. Maybe we're interacting all the time and we know each other, but it drains me. It exhausts me. It burns me out. And we need to add positivity. This is so powerful because you, 3% conference attendees, are the people who are the megaphones to our world. You're the ones that are driving what the rest of us are buying and experiencing and wanting. And you're talking to millions and billions of people who are craving connection. This loneliness it's around the world. Every single human wants to feel more connected and feel more seen and feel more connected. And so I want this for you. I absolutely want this for you. And I want this for your organization because I want your organization to succeed. It has a mission and it's beautiful. And I want this because you are working in a world that's dying of loneliness, that's craving connection. You can share with us, you can teach us, you can sell to us in a way that helps foster our connection. We may not all be able to find a vaccine to stop COVID-19, but every single one of us can help speak to this epidemic. Every single one of us can do something today that leaves us feeling more connected. Every single one of us today can do something that helps our customers, our clients, our colleagues, our coworkers, our boss, our team feel more connected. My invitation to all of us is that as we're going through this pandemic, epidemic, these times that are opening us up in new ways, make sure that when we're putting ourselves back together, that when we're showing up at work to make a difference, that the difference you're making is how does this service, this product, this brand help connect the people, your audience, to something that matters, to someone else? How do we leave people feeling seen in safe and satisfying ways? Blessings on all of you as you help do that in this world. We need you.
What a joy it is to be with all of you live. Thank you so much for your questions that you're coming in. When we're looking at the pandemic, the COVID, and how that connects to loneliness, those numbers I gave, that 61% of us feeling lonely, that was before the pandemic. And we've seen more and more talking about how we feel isolated, remote jobs, when we work from home, those numbers go up. And so many of us know this feeling. And one of my favorite things that this pandemic has done, if I'm allowed to say that, is it's kind of accelerated. It's a little bit what Lily was talking about earlier today when she was talking about how this has accelerated social responsibility for the corporate place. It's also really moved forward our awareness that loneliness isn't something that any one of us needs to feel ashamed of. It's allowed us to kind of name this as something that, of course, we all need connection. And it's taken away some of the shame. It's reminded that all of us are in this. I don't feel as guilty or as weird or as wrong to say I'm lonely now, because we know a lot of other people are. And so it's been a really beautiful accelerator for emotional intelligence. Going back to what Mark said this morning, it's so important that we can name that loneliness, that all of us can, rather than kind of resist it or be kind of worried, like that's not me, but I'm so glad we're talking about loneliness for all those people, but to actually say, yeah, I wish I felt more connected. And that doesn't just mean more interaction, but more connection. And so, yeah, this is such a beautiful moment, and thanks for having me here. One of the questions that came in was talking about how do we do this when it might be seen as cheesy in the workplace? Hey, it is not cheesy to feel loved, supported, and connected. Of course, it takes a little bit more initiation than a lot of us are currently experiencing. But the way we're doing life right now, not working. When 61% of us are regularly lonely, what we're doing now, even if it's non-cheesy, is leaving us really disconnected. And so, yeah, it might take us a feeling like we have to kind of flex new relationship muscles. We might have to kind of come in and say, wow, I'm not used to expressing my appreciation or sharing a little bit of this. But this is how we build bonds and connections. And I've been so fun to watch this whole conference this morning and to be looking at Adobe and IPG as they were talking, and they were giving examples of powerful vulnerability, saying, here's our numbers, and we're still trying to improve them. That takes vulnerability. And what did you do when Mark was telling his stories about his feelings and his emotion? We leaned in and we trusted him more. Is it feel cheesy for him, maybe perhaps to share that vulnerable story? Is it hard for companies to say, here's our numbers, here's where we're not doing well with diversity? Yeah, it's probably awkward, a little uncomfortable. It's not what we put out as like really non-cheesy. And yet, this is where we need to go. We crave it. We're scared of it, but we crave it. We lean in when people practice that transparency, that authenticity. And so I invite you, even if it feels a little cheesy, a little awkward, you go to the gym. I always use the metaphor, like you go to the gym and you don't leave when you start to sweat a little. You don't go, oh, this must be bad. My muscles are a little tired. On the contrary, you're like, that's what I'm here for. I understand that I won't get physically healthier until I've stretched a little bit, until I've exerted a little bit, until I've gone a little further than I'm used to, or lifted a little more than I'm used to. And that's what we need to do for our relationship muscles. We don't get stronger relationally by pulling away every time we sweat a little bit. And so I really invite all of you. This is powerful work. And this audience is one of the most powerful audiences because you are communicating. You're a megaphone to the world. And I think about diversity, and I go back and just kind of pulling out some of these other questions about these 3 requirements. They're the same 3 requirements, in my opinion, for how we can be allies for each other, champions for each other, mentors for each other. Whereas friendship is a relationship between any 2 people who both practice those 3 requirements of relationship. perhaps as a champion or an advocate for somebody, it doesn't go both directions, but it's the same three requirements. Positivity. How do we help somebody feel loved and appreciated? How do we make sure that they know they're accepted? How do we make sure that we're championing them and saying, yes, 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 we want that. We want you. And then how do we end up practicing consistency with them and prove that we're reliable to them and prove that they can trust us, that we're not only going to do this when it's trendy or when it's in the news, but that we're going to keep doing this consistently, keep showing up. And when are we going to do this with vulnerability, where we say, I really want to know your experience here. I really want to know how you hear these things, how you're receiving this, how we could be impacted. I want to show up with curiosity, which is the opposite of defensiveness. It's saying what you bring can change us. And so these three requirements, we can't go wrong if all of us keep practicing these three things. And so I feel like I've covered most of the questions. If I missed one, then I'm going to be doing a live room at 2:00 where you can come in and ask any questions you want. We can have conversations and sharing and go deeper on how we do better friendships in work, in leadership, with our customers, and in our own lives and in our families. And so you're welcome to join me there. Thank you so much for having me.